Hey guys, what's going on? So this morning I was like, oh, I want to do something with React hooks again because yesterday seemed to just like kind of bomb for me a little bit. Like I was working through some hook stuff on Nozzle, and I found out I think I found a bug in hooks, which is it's alpha, so like I can understand that. So this morning I was like, okay, I got to get back to Code Sandbox and into like the stable environment so I can try some more stuff with hooks out. And I've been thinking about it. The more I think about it, like hooks and context and all this stuff, what it's really adding up to for me, at least out of the gate, is that I'm not going to need Redux very soon. I feel like within this year, I'm going to be phasing Redux out of my apps. And going forward with more of like a React-centric state management system. So I wanted to go through and kind of just like play around with hooks and see like how close I could get to like the perfect like a really cool state management system for myself to use in Nozzle and to use in like just other apps that I build. And really what it comes down to is global state, I think. And you know, thinking about it, like one thing that I want to leave out is I don't want to like worry about any async data right now. Like Suspense is still kind of coming out, and I know things are going to change with Suspense, and a bunch of APIs are going to, like a bunch of like components that we use all the time are going to be rewritten. And there's going to be new paradigms for like data fetching and management come out. Like it'll be interesting to see how Redux and Apollo and all these like data management components use not only Suspense but also hooks. So I kind of want to stay away from that right now and just focus on like if I were just to manage global state, just like shareable state between components, how would I do that? So I'm going to take you into Code Sandbox. I feel like, why is that video so big? How about we don't do that so big? Jeez. All right, that should be way better. Okay, so like I have this little example that I set up right here. Again, Code Sandbox is amazing. You should use it for all the stuff. So I have a counter component here that's going to show a count and it's going to be able to increment. Pretty standard demo, right? Then I have a toggle where you're going to be able to toggle it on and off. It'll show the toggle on or off. And then I have a username that's just like a text field right here. That we'll be able to type into. And then I guess I want to be able to share state between these because that's really what global state is about. You could handle the state for all of these things individually on their own, and there would be no point for global state. So really, this count, I think what I want it to be is like user count. And I want that to affect how many users I can actually have. And then this toggle, I want to toggle whether or not I can actually turn them, like edit their names on and off, I guess. And maybe we can make this more complex as we go. But that was my idea for now. So like user count is going to be up here. And then username. Like, let's see, user count. So this is going to be like add user, basically. That's what this will be. Because counter examples and all this stuff is so simple, it's so contrived. And I think it's better to like get away from those kinds of examples and just try and make your examples as close to real life as possible without going too deep down the rabbit hole. So instead of toggle, I'm going to say like can edit. And we will just have that stay that way. And we'll call this can edit. I'm going to say toString on that. True. Toggle, so this is now can edit. And then we'll just call this users. Hold on, I got to turn on caps lock. Okay, users. Username. This is going to be a list of users most likely. Update username is probably going to take like an index, in my opinion. And then for all the different users, there's likely going to be, let's see, we're going to loop over users. Map user. You know, I don't have a unique ID for it, so I'm going to break the law here and use the index as the key. You shouldn't do that. And I'm going to use the input right here. Let's see, key is I, value equals user, and there will be some, oh, let's see, users. If there are no users, how about we display, let's see, are there users? Length. Then we'll display that. Otherwise, we'll display no users have been added yet. Okay, sweet. Let's put that in an emphasis tag. I don't know why I wanted to put that in an emphasis tag. I just did. Does small work out of the gate? Hey, kinda. We'll just do that. Okay, so now what we really want to do is, so when we add a user, we want it to add a user to like a users array at the top level. So we know at the top level we're going to have this users. We'll just call this state for now. And this is going to be like a users array. And then there's going to be like a can edit here, which is going to be true. So when we add a user, we want to like add something onto this. We want to add a user object here that we can edit. So this is where we need to start. Like, we need to have a home for this state, and it needs it needs to be like a kind of like a provider, I think, because we're gonna have to use context for sure, so that we can access the global state throughout our app. So I'm pretty sure that like we're gonna have like a store provider here. And that store provider is going to provide the store, the global store, to all of our components, and probably a way to update the store. And then we can think about consuming the store in a little bit. So let's build the store provider. So this store provider is going to return a provider. So it'll be like a let's see, it'll be like store, it'll be like context, let's see, store provider. It'll be like store context provider, because it's definitely going to have to use a provider, like a React provider, context provider, to pass the state down. So this is likely going to look like this. We'll just pass through children. So where are we getting that store context? Well, let's just make it, we'll say React create context. And we won't give it a default value. We can do that some other way. So, okay, it's providing context, but there is no value. The value is going to be the context value and we know that that's going to have, it's probably going to have like the state in it and like a way to update that state. And we know that that state, so this is, you probably heard me do this before, but I love memoization in React hooks. And there's a hook in here called React use memo. And basically you can just return a new object when something changes. So whenever the state changes, we're going to return this object to context value. So the context value is going to have the state and a way to update it. And you know, out of the gate, we could just do, let's see, we could do const state and update. In fact, let's just call it setState equals React use state. Okay, so this store provider is providing this stuff. And we could, okay, so like, let's see, this is like our initial state. So let's move this up here and call it initial state. And we'll create use state with that initial state. Okay, so we have our store provider and it's providing this state and a way to update it now to whatever. But then we need to consume this context in our app. So anywhere, like let's just start with the user count. We can say const state setState equals React use context, pass the store context, and if we console log out state and setState, we should have, okay, there we go. We have our state object here and then a setState function here that we can use to update our state. Pretty simple so far. So our count is going to come from the state. It's going to be like count. We're just going to destructure. Now really what it's going to be is users. Let's see. We're going to have users here. Count really is users length. How many users there are in there. So I wonder if we just start off with a user. What? Okay, yeah. So that shows we're getting the count there. And then setState is just like a general setState. So when we add a user, really what we're doing is we're calling setState. We're taking the old state and we are calling user, let's see, users, and it will equal the old users and then plus a new one, basically. So when we add a user, it should, okay, so it's incrementing. So basically we're just tacking onto this users array using like a setState from this store provider component. Pretty cool. Hi Miguel, welcome back. Okay, so this, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, I think, for this user count. Can edit would be like really similar. We would pull in like, let's see, we'd pull in this users, but then we just pull in can edit here. So can edit is true, and then toggle would basically be, we would call setState again, take the old state, and we would return can edit. Oh, we gotta always return the old state with hooks, like extend it, because this is it runs off of a reducer, so this will replace all of the state. So make sure you destructure or make sure you spread old into this state return. And then can edit, we're just gonna, this is just a toggle button, so we'll just say old can edit the inverse of that. So now, sweet. And you know what, I just thought of this. Let's do this. Let's do a debug component right here. Function debug. And let's just log out. Let's just embed the state. We're just going to return pre and then code. And then inside of here, we're just going to do JSON stringify state null2. Null is just like this callback for serializing functions and stuff. 2 is the indentation. So now we can at least see. Let's see, state, setState. Why is that not updating when I add that? Do you know why? I hate this. Toggle, true, false. I mean, we are not doing anything crazy here. So, in state changes, let's just console log out the context value, because I feel like something is funky. I'm adding a user, and it's adding the user to that array, but debug is not, let's see, console log state. Add user. And debug is not updating when the store provider updates. What is going on? The live sandbox link. Yeah, I think I know how to do that. Let's see, if I hit live, invite others to live edit the sandbox with you. We're doing it live. Well, do I want to let you guys live edit it with me? Generate a URL. To invite others, you need to generate a URL that others can join. You know what? Let's go for it. I'm live. Sign into chat. What? If I hit live, that's weird. My Google is asking me to sign in, but I am signed in. I'm streaming to you guys right now. Oh, there we go. Because I'm using setState. What do you mean it's not updating because I'm using setState? Oh, hey, so there's the, I posted the link. Did you guys get that? There's the code sandbox link. Okay, so let's see, you have to use context. Oh, dude, Kevin, you just saved me the biggest headache. Use context. I just don't even know how I didn't see that. Boom. There we go. You know what, that state, the debug stuff's going to be changing all the time. Thank you, Kevin. You rock. The debug stuff's going to be changing, so I'm actually going to move debug down to the bottom so it's not like getting in the way of our UI. Sweet. Okay. Dude. You rock. All right. So the thing about live editing on Code Sandbox is that you guys seeing the stream, you're going to see the stream like 15, 30 seconds later than I'm actually seeing it. So I think what I'm going to do is you guys can just suggest edits and stuff over the chat. I'll at least give you the live so you can follow along. But that's going to be like we're out of sync. I wish it was actually live, but it's not. Maybe as the internet gets better and YouTube's tech gets even better, that it will work. Okay, so like this is working now. We're changing global state. Really, it's the user. Let's see, can edit. So the users is the only thing that's not working yet. So let's subscribe to the context here. We want users, and now we're looping over the users. So if we add a user, there's an input box. Let's make it so there is on a new line every time. How about that? Okay, sweet. Now I can't update it yet because we need to write our updater here. So update username, we'll say on change. It's going to be like, we're going to take the event, and we don't want to worry about like passing the event handler right now. So we'll just say update username index, and we'll say value. So we'll pass e target value, and then right here we'll call setState, and it will be the old. We're returning all the old stuff and users. And this is where like immutable updates, I'll show you guys how to change to use like Immer in a little bit, because I think it's amazing. But for anybody who doesn't know immutability or know why Immer is amazing, we're going to do it the old way, which is kind of like, there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm going to show you the way that I've been doing it. Basically, if we're updating a specific index of this array, we have to take we have to spread the old users, but we have to slice it from the beginning until the index -1. And then we have to do the same thing, but for the ones after the index that we're doing. So we would take it from the index +1 to the end. And then the one in the middle is the one that we're updating. Like the index in the middle of that slice is the one we're updating. So we would say ... old users, and then we would pass the index. But really all we're doing is we're just updating a single value in here. So it's not an object, it's just value. So now when we, so if we're editing this second one, let's see. Old users, index -1, index +1. Yeah, I mean, that should be totally fine. Maybe this is not index -1. See, this is why I hate working with immutability stuff. It just complicates things in your brain that should not be hard. So like if we add another user here, okay. So now, like it's slicing the old ones right before the one we're editing, putting in our new values, slicing the ones afterwards. So it's, I don't know, immutability with arrays and deep updates. Oh, it gets so annoying. So, okay, at least it's updating our username. So we have all of our users. Now we need to make it so that when we have edit is false in this, so what we really want is can edit right here. And when can edit, we want to disable, let's see, let's do this after our handler. We're going to disable this input when can edit is false. So if we add a user, we can add in our usernames. Oh, disabled. Now I'm just like trying to catch my own errors before you guys do. So if we do that, then they become disabled and I can't use them. Okay, sweet. But the values should stay, so I can't edit it now. Okay, so like this is a perfect example. Like we have this component here of users is subscribing to state and it's subscribing to the can edit state. It's sharing state with users, like adding user here can update it here, and we're also editing the users. So you can see how this global state is getting passed around now. So if we do like here, we don't have a way to remove a user yet. I don't really care about it right now. I can just reload the page. So this is already pretty cool. So anywhere that we want to use our global store, we say use context, and we can get it from there. So where would this go wrong? How could this break? I think one thing that it's probably doing that we probably aren't thinking of just yet would be subscribing to certain parts of the state and only having it update. That's kind of like what Redux does behind the scenes. So it'd basically be like you could pass a subscriber here and you would say, you know what, I only care about the can edit part of the state. And when you pass that, this use context lifecycle, this state that it's doing behind the scenes here, it would only update when the actual value that you're passing updates. Now see, that's interesting because I wonder how that works with hooks. Since we don't have technically a higher order component, we don't really have control over component should update. So that's interesting. I don't know, what do you guys think about that? If we had these hooks can control component lifecycle, but do any of the hooks control component should update, like explicitly? I don't think they do. Because if we open up the hooks API, like we have use state, which has nothing to do with like should update, except it can schedule an update. We've got use effect, which is just for side effects. It's not necessarily saying whether we should update or not. Really, I think it comes down to like React Memo. React Memo is a little utility that it's a utility that they released with 16.6. And you can wrap a functional component in React Memo, and it will only update that component when the props change. So it sounds to me like this is something that we should probably not cover right now. Like, this is something I think that just Redux should just handle for now. Like, I know we could probably go and build this. It might go deeper than we want to right now. Like writing a subscriber inside of here isn't really going to work. We would probably still have to use some type of decorator like Redux uses, where we say, like connect, it'd actually be like subscribe, and then you would pass in the selector right here, and then you would actually pass in can edit. And that's still going back to higher order components, and I don't know if there's a way to get away from that right now with hooks. But it also may not be that important. It might be alleviated a little bit with hooks. I'm totally not sure. And we might just be able to use memoization instead. I know that there are cases where components shouldn't be updating because they're very expensive. But I don't think we should handle that right now. So let's see, use initial state. This is the initial state. So right now it's just using blind setState. And useEffect can receive a second argument, which is array of values that it does mem-wise. Yeah. So useEffect comes in handy for a lot of things. This one, like useEffect, only works if the component did update. That's the interesting thing. Is useEffect is a side effect that runs every single time, or only when those values that array of values, when one of those changes, then the useEffect runs. I kind of covered that in my first React hooks video, but it only happens if the function, or if the component actually renders, because the side effect is triggered after every render. It's interesting the way that it works. It's definitely a departure from like the component did mount and then using an instance to set up this subscription thing. Like useEffect is literally running right after every render. It's only running that function, or it's queued up after every render. It only runs. In fact, I'll just show you, like if we had useEffect right here, and we had a function inside of here, and let's say we console log hello. Like if we didn't give any, if we didn't give an array to this useEffect right here, the component we use it in would always log hello after it renders, like after it's updated. If we passed in a prop that changed, so like we'll say like on or something like that, then it would only log hello when on has changed. But in a way, it would queue up this function, it would queue up this effect after every render, and then it would look at on and say, oh, on hasn't changed, so it wouldn't actually run the function. It's really interesting. So definitely, instead of thinking like in terms of did mount or will unmount, really it's just here's an effect I want to run after every render, or when these things change, like always try and put something in this change handler, or this is going to be expensive. And then you can also teach, like if this was a set timeout, and you were doing a console log here, and you were waiting a second to do it, you got to teach your component, you got to teach that effect how to unwind in case of an unmount or in case on changes again. So really what we do is say, like, we need to keep track of that hello, and then we'd say cancel, let's see, set timeout, is it cancel timeout? I can't really remember. I don't use the cancel timeout as much as I should, but oh, it's clear, isn't it clear? Clear timeout, there it is. So you have to teach your component how to unwind, basically. So if your component starts to unmount, or if the on prop changes in the middle of this timeout, it will clear it, set a new one. Sorry, kind of a rabbit hole. I just can't help but restate that over and over because it's really important to start thinking in terms of side effects instead of like memoized side effects instead of lifecycle. So what were we talking about? I feel like right now we're just using setState. It's kind of naive. Like it means every single component can just like totally clobber the state, the global state, if they wanted to. Like this. If somebody forgot to put the old right here, and they just did can edit, like in there, one of your developers is editing this can edit component. They forget to spread the old into it. They don't test it correctly or whatever. So like, oh, add users works great, and then they toggle this. Oh crap, they just clobbered the user object because they weren't thinking straight and forgot, like this is something that they have to remember, and that's very brittle, that's fragile. I'd rather have that not be the case. So once, like there's, at one level there's like just setState, right? Which is just like old to new state. And then like going up the chain, there would be like callbacks, right? Which would say, like basically a callback is pre-bound, so you'd say function, thing, and then you kind of send it off into the ether and you get new state. So there'd be like, it's like a handler, and then it would give you the new state. And then like above callbacks, above or kind of like next to it, I guess, would be like the flux paradigm or like the redux paradigm, where you're sending an action and you get the new state. And these have different advantages and disadvantages to each one, but I feel like this is the natural like way of evolution through your app. So it's like, oh man, setState's getting unwieldy, and now it's becoming dangerous because if somebody doesn't spread the old state in there, they're clobbering it. So I think we should move to callbacks now, and instead of using just raw setState, we use callbacks. And the easiest way we could do that is your callbacks now have to be, your callbacks are going to take on this responsibility of being responsible with the old state and the new state. So if we were to just take this and say, you know what, adding a user is a function that takes the old state and returns the old state. Let's see. Adding a user is, it's like an action creator, but it's for setState actually. So add user would be, it's almost like setState add user. Interesting. So the add user is a function that returns an updater for setState, and that should actually still work just fine. So add user would return this updater here. So we could like extract out these actions right here. So toggle, it would be like setState toggle const setState equal, or no, it'd be const toggle equals, and they wouldn't have to be a function that returned the old one. These could just be like just a normal function, but it's good to have like a convention, a system. We're kind of doing an action creator kind of system here. Like if we wanted to add a user with a name in it already, we could pass it there instead of just doing this where we wouldn't be able to do that. So, and then let's see, this toggle is there. So this is where we'll actually see that pattern come into play. So update username, it's the index value setState. So instead of doing that here, we'll just say setState, what was that, update username. And then we'll build update username up here, const update username. And that's a function that actually brings in the index and the value and returns an updater for setState. So all this should still be the same. Oh, except for we still have the issue of not returning old right here. You know what? That's just something that you're gonna have to live with. At least now this action has been like, we've pulled this action out into some top level. It's easy to go through your actions and be like, okay, I just called the toggle action and something went wrong. Let's go look at the toggle action. Instead of having to go down into every single component that could be toggling and check how they're using setState, you've extracted the action out into the top. And this is kind of like, it's kind of fluxy, reduxy, but using setState. It's interesting. It's almost like each function is its own reducer, which is kind of a cool way to think about it. Like we could totally stop here if we wanted. I feel like this is like you could easily make and actions. You could easily make an actions object like const actions and just throw all of these functions into an actions object. And then you could just import your actions wherever you need them, and they're just functional set state. So they don't have any dependencies. And you could just dispatch your actions through setState in a way, which is pretty neat, I think. What would be cool is if you didn't have to import your actions at all, in my opinion. What if they just came with context? So like this setState, I like the idea of like the objects and APIs that are in your app describe their own capabilities. So setState right now is just a function that kind of just takes another function. To me, that's pretty ambiguous, and your users or your developers would still have to know how to do that, how to work with that. And to me, I like the idea of using like named actions. So instead of set state here, I would love to just get the add user function right here and just be able to call that without set state. Like if I'm calling set state everywhere, anytime I'm doing any of this stuff, then it just kind of seems superfluous to some extent. I want to do that. Let's change it to use actions. But before I do that, I'm going to show you guys Immer. Immer is awesome. So in some way, this actually could save us from the problem of not returning the old state with every single set state, right? So what Immer is you get to avoid all of this weird immutability syntax of always having to create new objects of the things that you're editing. Because this right here, what you probably thought out of the gate would be like, oh, users index equals value. Like that should be how easy it is to update this username. But unfortunately with immutability, that would be mutating the original user's object, and it could cause some problems with change detection algorithms because users technically wouldn't have changed. So anything relying on users saying, does the old users equal the new users? It would be like, oh yeah, it does, even though a value inside it has changed. But Immer.js lets us get around that. Let me pull up Immer.js really quick. Immer.js, let's see, Immer is right here. So if you guys haven't seen Immer, you can come in and check it out. Basically what it does is it takes a current JSON object and creates a draft of it where you can mutate and change it and mold it however you want, and then Immer goes through and creates the immutable new version of it. So basically it takes this right here. It takes, like, this is a reducer, and you can see that they're doing some immutability stuff here. They're saying return the old state, oh, and reduce through the products and change each product ID in this object to be the new product, return the object. Like, this is hard to understand. And then when you see it with Immer, all he's doing is saying, you know what, use a new Immer, and he takes the draft and he just loops through each action and says equals the thing. Like, it doesn't have to return a bunch of immutability stuff. I'm going to show you how easy it is to put it in. So all we have to do is say import Immer from, I think it's just, is it Immer or Immer.js? I think it's just Immer. Install Immer, yep. So import Immer, hey, we need to download Immer. Nope, not that one. We need to download Immer as a dependency. Let's make sure that we don't have that weird one that I accidentally added. Okay, and so now all we need to do is when we have our actions, instead of saying old or whatever, we can just say Immer, let's see, it's going to pass old, so we'll say Immer on the old draft And then this just becomes a function now. And we don't have to do all this like old spreading stuff. We can just say users push that. Oh, it'd be draft users push that. And so draft is basically the old state. So we can say, actually just change this to state, but I like it saying old. It helps me understand like which is which. So for the toggle, it would be basically the same thing. We would return an Immer object, and then we'd take draft can edit. Let's see, instead of just naming this toggle, we'll say toggle can edit. And can edit will push. We don't want to push. Can edit equals not draft can edit. Update username. Yeah, this is the one where it's really going to be awesome. So we can just say Immer on the old. It'll give us a draft, and now we just have a function where we can call users index equals value. Boom. Oh, actually it'd be draft users. There we go. And all this stuff should still work. And it's still immutable too, because Immer is turning our mutation syntax into immutable syntax. Immer is amazing. And now we don't have to worry about not returning the object every time. We kind of just saved ourselves from a problem that can occur quite often in immutability stuff, is not spreading the object back into it. So this is great, except for now I actually want to pass down these actions through setState. So I think what we could do is we're just going to say const actions, and we're going to move all of these actions into this object. So let's get rid of const, and let's turn that into that, and we'll turn these semicolons into commas. So now our actions are in an object. This won't work anymore because it's like add users not defined. So right here, instead of passing down setState, I think what we should do is we should pass down actions. And you know what? I like the idea of just having a single function instead of having the old state. Like, I like the idea of just having the old state right here, not having this double function, honestly. And then, so like, the old state would always be the first parameter, and then anything the user sends through in the action would come after that. And then also, like, I'm using Immer in every action, basically. So it would be pretty cool just to not have to do Immer. What if this was just the state, and we didn't have to do all this Immer stuff every time? That, to me, feels like the best way to do it. Because then our actions don't have to be responsible for calling Immer, they just work. So let's see, state needs to have an opening function, so does that one, and so does that one. And then draft now just becomes state, and wow, our actions are way simple now. So you can take these actions now, and we just need to like bind these actions in here to use setState. So really what's happening is whenever they call setState, really what we want is we want an Immer. So Immer setState is now taking the old state, and it's returning Immer using the old state, and then it's giving us the draft, which we're then going to call our action with the draft and then the args that were called with that original action. And so let's see. This is kind of getting a little confusing. Let's see if we can break this up a little bit. So we want our actions to all, we need to like pre-bind our actions basically. So const Immer actions. We're going to make a new set of these actions inside of here, inside of our store provider. We're going to loop through the actions, so we'll say object actions, or object keys actions for each key. So this is the action name, is the key. And we're going to do Immer actions key equals actions key, except for we want to wrap it. So really what it's going to be is we're going to say it's going to take, so when we call the action, we're going to call it with args. Like whenever we call an action, like right here, like update username, it's going to come with some args. Like it's going to come with like I, and name or index or whatever. We just want to take all those args and save them for a second. And then we're going to call setState, which is going to give us the old state. And then we want to call, just kind of like what we're doing right here, then we're going to call Immer on the old state, which is going to give us the draft. And then we want to call our original action, let's see, with the draft and the rest of the args. And then we can just get rid of that. That might be a little hard to follow. There's a lot of composition going on here, but this is where it becomes really powerful. So I'll go over this again. We have a set of actions here, and we're going to copy them, but we're going to proxy each action to do something special. So we loop through all of the actions, and we say, you know what? These Immer actions, they have the same interface, so they're just a function you can call that take the args, just like it would be up here. But then we're using setState and Immer to finally call our original actions with the draft and the arguments that they were called with. So this is the draft, and these are the arguments. And we just created an Immer store. So now these Immer actions, instead of using setState call down, we'll just call Immer actions. And now if we do this, let's just console log out. Okay, so we added the Immer actions to our context value right here. And now if we just log out actions, you're going to see we just have these functions right now. Add user, toggle can edit, update username. And you see they're like kind of complex looking, like they're wrapping a bunch of things, but that's okay. To us, they're just actions that we can call now. So we could say actions dot, or we can just destructure now and say add user. Now we don't need setState. We can just call add user. So add user, when we call it, is calling this Immer action that we created, which is passing the args through the old setState, the functional setState updater, and which is then using Immer, which is then calling our original action up here with the state, which we're then just mutating. And really, this is getting custom, but I mean, you could build a state manager however you want. This is just how I wanted to build it. Like, I like Immer and I think it's valuable, and I like having just named actions through my entire app that I could use. So we could do the same thing here now with setState. Instead of setState, it's toggle can edit, and then we just get rid of that. And then also here, we just say update username, And now we have no more setState. Update user name. So now all of our functions are still working, but to our components that are using it, it looks so simple. Like we can get at the global state, and then we can use very predefined safe actions to update our state. There's no set state where you can just like willy-nilly do whatever the heck you want, right? So I feel like this is a really good place right here. And this is basically our global state. So everything, let's see, everything right here, all we have is some context. We have some actions and a store provider. And this is where we are wrapping our actions in setState and Immer. So I feel really cool about this. Memorize one isn't needed anymore because we're just using hooks. This is really cool. So we just built our own global store. We have total control over it. So if we wanted to add in middleware to like save the state to local storage, in fact, that's the last thing we're going to do. It'll take 1 minute, and then we'll be done with this video. So every time that we call setState, it's going to call this function and return the new state to setState. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to say const new state equals Immer that. And then we're going to return the new state, but before we do, we're going to say local storage set item, and we're going to say we'll just say app state, and then we're going to JSON stringify the new state into it. And then when we load this up on our initial state, we're going to say we're going to do this. We're going to say local storage get item app state, and we'll say JSON. Let's see. We'll say const let's see, cached state equals that, and we'll say if there's a cached state, we're going to JSON parse the cached state. Otherwise, we're going to start it up with this normal state right here. So now, every time that we're using an action, we're saving the new state to local storage, and then anytime that we're loading the app, it's trying to load the cached state from the browser. So if we add a user and hit reload, it brings us right back. We can toggle, reload, we can add users in here. Oh, make sure we can edit it. Reload, and it's always saving the state. So you can see you can build your own state management utility with hooks really easily. Honestly, it looks like it's only about 20 or 30 lines of code to, and that's prettified to build your own state manager. And we could keep going. You could make this as powerful or as simple as you want. So again, I got to restate, hooks are amazing. Hooks are so much fun. You can see like using state and context and memoization and stuff is so easy to do. So I really cannot wait until this lands in stable React. Yeah. So I hope you guys like this video. I hope you guys look forward to like other videos I want to do. I'd really like to get some ideas from the community and you guys, like what would you like to see me do with hooks? Honestly, I'm just so excited to explore the possibilities with them that if you guys have ideas, I'd love to hear them from you. You can leave a comment in here or tweet at me. Be sure to share the video, and I'll see what I can do tomorrow. So see you guys. Thanks.